Initiation into Hermetics, a Practice of Magic by Franz Barden. Practices with the elements. A great number of possibilities are offered to a magician who wishes to specialize more particularly in the use of the elements, provided he has materialized, i.e., condensed the element with which he is working in such a manner that the elemental power has become a real physical power. Being perfect in doing so, he can, through condensation of the earth element in his body, produce such an invulnerability of his body that it resembles to that shown by the Indian fakirs in their performances. He is capable to run pointed objects through his muscles without feeling the slightest pain or losing a tiny drop of blood, to say nothing of a scar left. Fakir's insensitivity to pain when lying on a nail board is, to a certain extent, brought about by auto-suggestion, but a magician produces the same effect much faster with the help of the earth element. He is indeed able to cure big cuts on his own or any other person's body, directly with the help of the earth element, without leaving a scar behind. A gaping wound, which normally would require a surgeon's aid, can really be healed in a few minutes. The earth element, which he is condensing outside of his own person, enables him to condense every thought, every impression, every being, whether deceased or not embodied, to such a degree that it becomes visible to the eyes of a completely untrained person and can even be photographed. The magician has the great advantage of being able instantly to paralyze anybody, man or animal, even his deadly enemy, by the extremely quick projection of the earth element. There are some more possibilities of employing this element, but I hope that the above remarks may be sufficient meanwhile. Sip of tea. The water element, projected and condensed very strongly in itself, helps the magician to stand the greatest heat, without his body being scorched or burnt. Projected into the hands, the element permits the magician to hold red-hot coals or irons without any damage being done to his hands. He could even stand smiling in the middle of a blazing steak. Bloody hell. And nothing at all would happen to him. Let me draw your attention to the biblical event where the young man in the red-hot oven remained unharmed. John, the favourite disciple of our Lord, is said to have been immersed in a boiler with burning oil, and no harm was done to him either. The magician will now see that events like these are not only legendary traditions, but they did really and truly take place. And such apparent miracles can be performed by mastering the elements. Every kind of fire, regardless of its extension, can be extinguished with the help of the projected and condensed water element. The magician can, of course, perform such almost miraculous feats with the air element too, in the same or a similar manner. With the help of the fire element, the magician is able to stand the greatest cold if he does accumulate this element in himself. The lamas in Tibet can, with the help of the concentrated fire element, produce an enormous heat in their bodies, so that they can, in no time, dry wet towels spread on their bodies in the depth of winter. This experiment is known in Tibet under the name of tumo. Any kind of combustible material can be lit with the help of the outwards projected fire element. The Bible describes similar occurrences, where stakes soaked with water were set on fire by means of the fire element. There is no doubt that a plant, for example a tree, can be made to die down through the projection of the fire element. Did not our Lord Jesus Christ make dry up the leaves of a fig tree in order to give tokens of his power? He did consider the same law, performing the projection with the help of a magic word, Kabbalah, which indirectly caused the fire element to carry out his command. Backed by the universal laws respecting the mastery of the elements, the perfect magician will bring about an amount of other magic performances with the aid of the elements. Levitation. What is wrong with my... Can't seem to get the words out. Levitation phenomena. Levitation means the abolition of the law of gravitation. Based on the universal laws, the magician has found out that the power of gravity depends on the magnetic attraction of the earth. The gravity of the own body can be abolished in two ways. Firstly, through constant loadings or accumulations of the air element, in brackets, waju tatwa. The primary quality of this element is realized to such a degree that man feels light as a feather, and as rising and floating in the air like a balloon. The second method demands the mastery of the electromagnetic fluid. By accumulating the magnetic fluid in the body to such a degree of density as corresponds to the weight of the body, that means the attractive power of the earth, the effect of the gravity, will be neutralized altogether. In this condition of loading, the magician will hardly touch the ground, and he can even move on the surface of the water quite sure, regardless of its depth. Condensing the magnetic fluid more and more, he can at will raise his body in the air, and by means of the condensed air element or the self-produced movement of the air, he can be carried on in any direction. The speed of transport in the air depends entirely on his own will. Many of the yogis possess a remarkable ability in mastering these levitation phenomena, and even in the Bible we read that our Lord Jesus Christ was walking on the surface of the sea. Considering what has been told hitherto, it seems to be quite evident that, in this manner, objects or even people who are not magically trained can be carried away by a magician if he wishes to do so. The accumulation of the necessary magnetic fluid can be performed by the magically trained imagination or with the help of some other practices such as Kabbalah, interference of beings or ghosts, and so on. The elimination of the electric fluid in the body and the increase of the magnetic fluid can take place not only deliberately but unconsciously as well. For example, in the cases of spiritualistic mediums and somnambulists, where the electric fluid is, by trance, abolished and, in return, the magnetic fluid increased. Where the electric fluid is, by trance, abolished, and in return the magnetic fluid increased. Yeah, I did read that right. In consequence of a sudden loss of the electrical fluid, moonstruck people generally, when asleep, may be overwhelmed by the magnetic fluid. Many times such moonstruck people may be observed to be able to climb a wall like a fly, or to move about on the most dangerous spots of a house, or even on a wire rope. Magnetic overloading of moonstruck subjects while being asleep can be traced back to the influence of the moon. That's why somnambulism is also called moon madness. In any case, the condition means a disharmony, a disturbance of the electromagnetic fluid, and, consequently, a pathological state or an illness. A person afflicted in this manner can be treated only by harmonizing the electric fluid, which has to be increased in the sick body. This summarized interpretation of the levitation phenomenon should, for the present, suffice to the magician, although from the aforementioned arguments he might draw the conclusion that it will also be possible to produce the opposite effect, that is, an increased attractive or gravitational power. And as a matter of fact here, the result is brought about in the same manner, with the electric fluid instead of the magnetic one. This explanation is unequivocal if the magician takes into consideration the basic law of physics, which says that like poles of two magnets repel one another, just as two unlike forces attract themselves. Phenomena of nature. The magician can, with the help of the elements and the electromagnetic fluid, produce such types of phenomena in the nature on a large or small scale. He will, however, need more space in order to be able to project and condense the necessary powers. So by the projection of the air element, he can influence the movement of the air, i.e. the wind, or bring about pelting rain or even steady downpour by projecting the water element. On the other hand, he can conjure thunderstorms with the help of the electromagnetic fluid by projecting electric and magnetic volts in the air, which, when clashing, will cause the lightning. By concentration of the magnetic fluid, he can draw the water element even from the greatest distance automatically, making rain in this way. Obviously, he is also able to achieve the contrary effect by stopping unwelcome rainfall or by scattering the clouds. Hailstorms may as well be brought about or directed elsewhere, for through the elements or the electromagnetic fluid, any influence whatever can be exerted on the nature. This sort of weather-making is successfully practiced by the Tibetan lamas. Thus, in this, as in so many other ways, the magician knows various methods to cause these phenomena and is able to do this with his own powers after a special training. Just as the Tibetan Lama brings about, with the help of rites, evocational magic of beings and tantras. Power over life and death. A magician who is perfectly mastering the elements and the electromagnetic fluid is also master over life and death of every human being. But he will never dare to menace the lives of his fellow men, though he does exactly know how to induce a magical death. There would be a lot of possibilities of doing so, but I desist from quoting such methods in order not to lead the magician into temptation. According to the universal laws, a magician of illumined spirit and perfect in mastering occult faculties and powers will also be capable to raise the deceased from the dead. Backed by his high mystical experiences and with the help of his well-trained senses, the magician can see not only the working of the elements in the body, the spirit, and the soul, but also the effect of the electromagnetic fluid. Moreover, he can notice the connecting bond between the material, the astral, and the mental body, and he knows how all this can be influenced according to the universal laws. It will be easy for him to restore the two connecting links by means of the elements and the electromagnetic fluid. In a case where no vital organ has been destroyed, the magician can restore to life, provided he has been destined by the divine providence to do so. He can cancel the death of persons or animals killed by an electric shock, lightning, or similar events. All he has to do in such cases is to establish the contact with the spirit in Akasha, deliberately inducing the electromagnetic fluid between the spirit and the soul in order to fix the connecting link between the soul and the spirit. Then he has to do the same with the spirit and the soul with respect to the body, thus producing the correct harmony by means of the elements and the electromagnetic fluid. The deceased one is restored to life by instantaneously filling the body with the principle of light. This is the synthesis of the resuscitation in the magical way as induced with the powers of the elements and the electromagnetic fluid, no matter whether willpower or other methods play a role in it. It is well known that higher adepts did accomplish such resuscitations. Before finishing the 10th step, I am going once more to point out that not all of the magic faculties described here have to be likewise mastered. In recognition of and obedience to the spiritual law which governs the universe, I have given the magician directions of how to bring about such phenomena bordering on the miracle. It is entirely left to the magician himself how far he is going to specialize in one or the other of the disciplines. A perfectly skilled person, an adept, an adept can execute everything and perform even greater magic phenomena than the ones I mentioned here in the light of the universal laws. Consequently, the complete course of instruction concerning the first tarot card, the one of the magician, has come to an end. People who have made up their minds to follow this course practically have been given the opportunity of completing their development. There is no other way to render the practice more understandable than I did. The description I have given here responds to the knowledge handed down up to now only in the temples of mysteries and imparted to the most selected and trustworthy scholars. Those who want quick results will be disappointed, for sometimes these studies will spread over years. But this fact will not deter the sincere scholar from penetrating the knowledge of this first initiation. For this reason, the first card, the magician, represents the gate to true initiation. A great deal of people who have been smiling ironically about the problem of magic will probably have to change their minds after reading this book. There are so many misconceptions about magic, and so you should never forget that things are often misinterpreted. Magic is the most difficult knowledge on earth, which has to be mastered not only theoretically, but first of all practically. It is much easier to attain intellectual knowledge than to become a true magician. Summary of all exercises. Step 10. 1. Magic mental training. Elevation of the spirit to higher levels. 2. Magic psychic training. conscious communication with the personal God. 2. Communication with deities and so on. 3. Magic physical training. Several methods for acquiring magical faculties. End of step 10. Franz Barden's initiation into Hermetics.